How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and welcome back to another episode of Don't Starve Together MODlight, this series in which I present some of the most compelling mods that I've discovered personally and have been using over the past week. So let's get started. First, we have a mod called Dark Souls Characters, created by Maxwell, spelt with a C, and Malleus. So what this mod essentially promises is to introduce 3 new characters to Don't Starve Together, that being the Knight, the Cleric, and the Thief. At this moment, there is currently only the Knight actually implemented in the game, so that is the only character that I'm going to be covering here. Now, the Knight themselves has a very strong, heavy character. We're looking at a character with 270 health, 170 hunger, and 100 sanity. In addition to this, there are some very unique items that the Knight is going to be capable of using. Here we have the broadsword, the claymore, a light sword, and an abyss greatsword. All of these are varying in degrees of strength. In addition to the swords, we have the Knight helmet, the Knight armor, ancient souls, which can be obtained by killing bosses, and the Estus flask. The Estus Flask works as sort of a healing method. You're going to be trading hunger for health with it. So if you're involved in combat and you need some quick healing, you can use it to heal yourself up to 5 times at the cost of hunger. Once you use the entire thing, it'll turn into an empty flask, and you can go ahead and refill it at the campfire at the cost of around 30 hunger. In all fairness, it is probably overpowered, but that is really besides the point, because there are a lot of overpowered characters in the game currently. Clay Entertainment has never really been one to care about balancing their game. In addition to that, so here we have Knight Mask, Knight Armor, and we'll pick up the best sword, that being the Abyss Sword, and equip it. So this is basically the best getup you're going to have, and this armor does slow you down by about 20% with both pieces equipped. In addition to that, the character themselves is slower when attacking, so only 1 attack per second. Let's spawn in something that we can kill. Okay, we have a Deerclops here, so this gives you an idea. This is as fast as you can hit with the character. And as you can see, it is draining my sanity at a rapid pace. I'm down to 0 already. But the Deerclops was defeated in a record amount of time, so does it really matter? Then you can do some quick healing with the Estus Flask, just like that. Let's go after the Terror Beak with it once. So apparently 3 hits for the Terror Beak and 2 for the Crawling Terror, or the Crawling Horror. So as you can see, it is a character that is very much designed with tanking in mind, given its high amount of armor, as well as very strong sword, lots of health, and the Estus Flask, which will enable you to remain in the battle for as long as possible. Obviously, this is still a work in progress mod, and I look forward to seeing some of the other characters implemented as well. Okay, the next mod that we're going to be covering here is called Craftable Ruins Turf by Leonardo Coxington. It basically allows you, if you go into structures, you can see down here at the very bottom, you have the ability now to craft various types of ruin turf. So if you're somebody who is not quite hardcore enough to actually be able to set up a base in the ruins, you can actually bring the ruins to your base. In terms of the cost for these, the rune trim turf costs 3 cut stone and 1 nightmare fuel. The dull rune trim turf costs 6 stones and 1 nightmare fuel. It's pretty much the same going on up. Stones and nightmare fuel will basically get the job done for you. In addition to that, you can also equip a pitchfork and dig up the runic turf. So in other words, you can transplant it from the ruins themselves up into your base. Just about like that. Not a huge mod, not going to make a huge difference. And the nightmare cycle is no longer synced with it. So at least as far as I can tell, it doesn't appear to be in sync with the nightmare cycle anymore. But it is it's a nice option if for those of you who actually wanted or really liked the runic turf and were disappointed by the fact that by default you're unable to acquire it. Next up, we have the Lantern Bug Enabler, created by Carl Zelf. Basically, all this mod does is revert the game to a state pre-patch when it was actually possible to hold the lantern and another tool at the same time. This was possible by dropping, say, your weapon on the ground, then equipping your lantern, then grabbing your lantern out of your inventory and picking up the spear. If this was night, you'd be able to see exactly that the lantern itself is still on and is still illuminating the area. If you look at the percentage of the lantern, you'll notice that it is going down over time. It has just dropped to 44. So this effectively allowed you to do various things throughout the night, such as chopping down trees, mining stones, or even fighting animals. Okay, it is now evening, so let's go ahead and give the lantern bug a right good old-fashioned test. So there, I removed it from my hand. I'm no longer holding it. But now I am holding a great sword, as well as the lantern itself is lighting the place up. You can tell it is lighting the place up because if I do that, it becomes dark. That's what it's like with the lantern. That's what it's like without. So if I swap the two, drop the great sword in the ground, remove the lantern from my inventory, pick it back up, all of a sudden we have light where there was no light previously, and we can fight that way if we so desire. Recently, though, Clay Entertainment actually patched this bug out of it, so if you are missing it and think it deserves to be in the game, this mod, simple enough, it just re-enables it again so you can do it, just like old times. Last but not least, we have the single mode mod by Vulgar. Basically, all this mod does is it rebalances the health of enemies in Don't Starve Together, so that way they correspond to the values that were available in the single-player version of Don't Starve. So in other words, for example, the Deerclops only have 2,000 health instead of 4,000. If we examine the Deerclops right there, you can see 2,000 out of 2,000 health. If you're somebody who is, say, for example, just getting into Don't Starve and chose Don't Starve Together over the single-player version of the game, you might find this makes playing the game easier, especially if you don't have anybody to play it with or are just keen on playing the game by yourself. So anyway, that pretty much does it for this week's episode. I know this was a little bit shorter than usual, but the mods themselves were not overly complex and did not require much explanation for other players to understand what their intended purpose was and or how they work. If you're interested in trying any of these mods for yourself, please go ahead and follow the links that will be provided in the description below to the Steam Workshop. Be sure to thank the creators of these mods if you found them enjoyable. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.